Good morning again. This is take two. We're trying again, and we're going to try and get my rabbi, Ken Chasen, to join us. So if you were here before, come on back and join us. I'm going to put a request in right away so that we can see if Ken is able to join this time. Okay, and let's see if any, now, oh, great. So Ken joined, and I'm waving at you. Good, you gave me a wave, and Julie's back. Yay! Hooray!
Weird. The internet gremlins.
Listen, two old people trying to do Instagram Live. I'm proud of us for even trying, right? I'm proud of us for even trying. Good morning. How are you this morning?
I'm good. Good to see you, albeit a bit late, but delighted to see you nonetheless.
Yes, well, I agree. I feel the same way. Now, I know you're a busy guy. Does your schedule allow us to do the half an hour from now?
Yeah, but I'm worried for your audience that are used to hearing you at 10.
They'll come back. They'll come back.
Okay.
My audience is not, it will be enormous, but it's not enormous yet. So hopefully so far, at least one person has come back. My best friend from Chicago, Julie's back. So thank you, Julie, for joining us again. And I'm sure a few more people will come back in. I was bragging about you. I was saying that, and I hope you don't mind my just using a little off-color language, but I was saying that my rabbi is badass. And that's truly how my family and I view you, because you are such an extraordinary influence and inspiration to all of us. And I certainly know the entire Leo Beck community. But let me formally introduce you again. This is Rabbi Ken Chasen, who is the, what do you say, principal rabbi of
Senior rabbi.
The senior, thank you. The senior rabbi at Leo Beck Temple in Bel Air in Los Angeles. And Leo Beck Temple is known for being a very progressive synagogue for Reform Judaism, and I have always found Leo Beck to be the most embracing and of any denomination, any religion, any sex, any race, any gender, completely all inclusive. And so, if anyone is looking for a place to feel like you belong, this is the place to come. So. The other thing that I was sharing with people before, so that's Ken Chasen. That's his synagogue, and it's rocking and rolling there all the time. Let's just jump right into it. I was talking about the different events that you have at Leo Beck, such as Roberta Kaplan coming with Integrity First for America and so forth. And then I was talking about the JUDJ, which you're a part of, and I think is such an extraordinary series, traditionally Wednesdays at 5 o'clock Pacific time, and the various guests that you've had, from Carl Bernstein to Tom Friedman, the list goes on, and it's something that I try and tune into every Wednesday when I can, and I'm really, really inspired by the conversations that happen there. But let's just start truly in the deep end about something that you did this past year that blew my mind. And as the daughter of a Holocaust survivor, and since the film that I'm making is truly about silent heroes, people who step out of their own comfort zone to help somebody else, even if it's not in their best interest, you became one of the clergy in Los Angeles that created a human wall to protect Black Lives Matter protesters from police. I am blown away by your courage and your bravery that allow you to do that. How do you feel now that you've done that?
Yeah, that was, this summer was just such an important time with regard to the demonstration with our bodies, what we stand for. There's one of the dangers, I think, in religious community is there's oftentimes a push from those who are coming to their churches and synagogues in hope of escaping all of the craziness that's out there in the world. The reality is we run a tremendous risk of becoming irrelevant if all we are is sort of a placebo that gives you the illusion that, well, for the short time at church or synagogue, have this spiritual zen. I can attend to my own spiritual need, but don't get me wrong, I'm not in any way minimizing the importance of doing that. The problem is if it doesn't have a window, that looks outside of the sanctuary, out to the rest of the world, then the spiritual rebuilding that we get from being in religious community ends up becoming very insular and self-serving. Um, the, the religious values we teach in churches and synagogues were completely aligned with the needs of the Black community this summer. And so, yeah, I joined with other pastors, priests, ministers, imams, and rabbis who brought support, protection to the Black community as they were rallying for a very, very good cause, and a cause that I think, frankly, all of us who have lived a life of being a small minority population in a larger majority population, of course, this is what your film is pointing to as well. If the Black community and the Jewish community can't find common cause with regard to aligning on those kinds of, I don't know who can.
That's for sure. Absolutely. And then on top of that, I think that we can't ignore the fact that not only did you do this and the other clergy in Los Angeles, and it's so cool, is that it was in the middle of a pandemic. I mean, I went to one rally feeling so uncomfortable, so scared to be there. You know, it's not that I'm so old, but I'm not so young. And it's just a petrifying thing. It was still kind of in early days. I mean, that was June, right?
It was early June, that's right.
Early June. And so it still wasn't, we were all kind of starting to get a little normalized with the pandemic, saying, okay, well, masks every day. And we were still washing all of our groceries and all that kind of thing.
Right.
But I think we were starting to take tiptoe steps into going to grocery stores rather than having things delivered. But that you did this knowing quite possibly that you could have contracted COVID.
Yeah, that was definitely a consideration, Beth. And I'll tell you, you know, it actually was the reason why, in an uncommon way, I mean, over all the years, I'm now in my 18th year at Leo Back Temple. And over the course of those years, there have been many times where, whether it was the Islamic community, whether it was the immigrant community locally, whether it was a statewide concern pertaining to policing, whatever it may be, where not only have we taken action as rabbinic leaders, but we've reached out to our congregation and asked folks to join with us. This was a rare exception where I did not do that. And I felt specifically because of COVID, I knew that there would be some folks who would choose of their own volition to go out to the streets and to be a part of that, but I didn't feel it was actually responsible from a standpoint of the Jewish value of pikuach nefesh, which is the save life. There was a real conflict between my obligation to make certain that I was preserving the lives of the serve, and at the same time also advancing justice concern that was of paramount importance. And so it was a rare instance where I chose to take on symbolic role as a leader as opposed to really attempting to be an organizer and mobilizing others to join with me in taking action. Yeah, of course it came to mind, although I will say this, you know, much has been made about the conflict about how to characterize those gatherings over the summer. Were they violent? Were they looking for trouble versus were they nonviolent protests? I'll tell you this, you know, I happen to be the gathering that I went to, the first one, was the one that the rioting began.
Mm-hmm.
And I happened to, just by dint of accident, I happened to be exactly at the spot at the moment where the violence began. And what I can tell you is this, that violence was not propagated by Black Lives Matter's organizers. In fact, partnering with me, I was there in religious garb, so as to be symbolically visible. And I took one lone police cruiser that was parked. We were walking down, I believe it was 3rd Street toward Fairfax. There was one lone police vehicle that was parked, and the overwhelming majority of folks, they're in masks, they're rallying peacefully, and then the folks who exploited the opportunity to start beating on that police car. And all I can tell you is Black Lives organizers, the people in charge of that march, instantly gathered with me and other religious leaders, attempting our best without getting ourselves beaten, because people had they were using
Billy Club.
Yeah. Objects that would, you know, create some danger to a person as well. But that was not Black Lives Matter's organizers. It's really important that we know that this is something that was exploited by those, frankly, not rallying for the cause there to make their own cause.
Well, I'm really glad that you're pointing that out, because it is such an important fact about that day. And it is petrifying for all of us who look to you as our rabbi, that you were at that spot. When people see that picture of the Starbucks and the flaming police car, that's what you're talking about. That's
That
the
I
location.
I literally was approaching that vehicle when it was still completely intact. And I was walking up to it and I saw it parked there right in front of that Starbucks. And I thought to myself, oh my God, it's the first time we saw a police cruiser. We saw police presence, mostly overhead, but every now and then on the streets as well. And it was the first time I saw it was a parked police cruiser with no police personnel at it, in it. And so
Right.
I got worried because I thought to myself, easy target, someone who's looking for trouble. And literally, as I was there, people started beating on it, and we were literally screaming to try to stop them. And for a while, our bodies were right there, directly next to them. It got to a point where the vehicle itself started steaming, and there was great fear that it would explode. And so people started fleeing, running in the opposite direction. But yes, yeah, I was there exactly when that happened, and just such a sad thing, because it was toward the very end. We were actually on our way back to Pan Pacific Park. The entire day had been peaceful, and we're talking about many thousands of people. Anybody who wishes to represent that as this is where the rioters go, it's just a falsehood.
Yep. I can only imagine what Allison said when you got home.
Oh, but it was frightening. I mean, I've, obviously done a lot of this type of stuff over the years. I've never been right at the epicenter where something turned from nonviolent to violent like that. And yeah, it was frightening. I obviously was pleased to have gotten out of there safely.
Yeah, of
But
course. We're all pleased you got out of there safely.
yeah, it's a tremendous sadness, though, to see something that was really well directed, justice directed, turning into something that could easily become targeted. That's the thing. The entire thing ends up becoming in a news story about that one moment, when in point of fact, that moment was the anomaly.
Yes, I understand. So let's talk about really more about that you as a person are walking in the world doing things that are not necessarily in your own self-interest. Can you speak a little bit more about that?
Yeah, at the end of the day, there's a beautiful teaching in the early rabbinic tradition, and in in fact, the very earliest collection of rabbinic. This goes back about 1,800 years ago. And the teaching says that if I am not for myself, who will be for me? But if I'm only for myself, what am I? And if not now, what? Those are the three pieces of the teaching. It's a very famous rabbinic teaching, and it's one that I think holds us all accountable for really all three of those elements, right? The first piece being very clearly about the fact that as Jews, we understand what it is to live in a world where we are counting upon safety living in a host culture. At the time that the rabbi was writing this teaching, it was after the destruction of the Second Temple. Jerusalem. It was after the Jews were expelled by the Romans, and it was the beginning of the Jewish diaspora experience, living as a small group among a large group of others, which has been variably a dangerous experience for Jews or a welcoming experience for Jews. Obviously, better than what Jews have found in the 20th century and now 21st century in America. But there have been other instances where it has been a safe and welcoming experience. The point is, we also know the other side of that coin. And so if I'm not for myself, who will be for me? Whereas there is an obvious obligation to protect. But that second piece, if I'm only for myself, what am I? Is right there from 1,800 years ago, fundamental religious call from the rabbinic tradition, and not to be disembodied from the third piece. If not now, when? You don't get to choose when the moments are that are defining with regard to the establishment of your religious values as other interested, as being more than just about oneself. One of the things that I carry in my heart is that the alliance between the Black community and that was so strong during the civil rights movement of the 50s and 60s is not what it was. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that, sadly, because of the evolution of life in America, as Jews have been conditionally permitted, at least Jews who look like you and me, Beth, have conditionally permitted to become white in America. Obviously, blacks don't have the opportunity to change the color of their skin. And so there's been a slow disengagement between the two peoples as the black community has seen their reality looking quite differently than at least the white passing Jewish experience in America. And frankly, Jews oftentimes have backed away from that alliance because of the first part of that three-part quote. Well, sometimes the positions that we take are not necessarily in our own self-interest, but they honor the second and the third pieces of that quote. And that's what I was at that day.
Absolutely. That quote, there's an iteration of it in the last gallery of the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. For those people who haven't been to the Holocaust Museum, you begin at the top and you wind down 3 stairways, and then you go through a children's liberation gallery, you go through an emigration gallery, you go through survivor testimony films, and then just as you walk out, before you actually go into a sanctuary where you can light a candle in memory of someone, there is this quote from a Lutheran minister saying exactly that. And it's certainly a non-denominational, theory that, or not even theory, but teaching that belongs to everybody and all of us. And if we can't all participate and give towards it, then what are we here for in the first place?
Yeah, it's a very important point, Beth. The section of rabbinic literature from which that quote comes is called Pirkei Avot. It's called the sayings of our ancestors, of our fathers, because it so happens that back in that period of time, all the voices that appear in that book were male voices. But the point is, that collection of teachings is not designed to be a series of Jewish laws about religious observance. It's really all maxims for living in a humane way. And they really are not designed only to be seen as wisdom that's uniquely held by Jews, but it's definitely speaking to all of us as human beings.
Right. And then the other thing you say in the third part is something that I've actually used as a quote from John Lewis.
Yeah.
The time, we don't choose the time chooses us.
That's right.
Right.
This was exactly what this summer was about. I mean, we had a lot of discussions in my home, obviously, about whether or not it was appropriate for me during a stay-at-home order in a pandemic to take to the street because large numbers of others were doing so. That was where we threaded that needle between asking the members of our community to do so with me and instead simply modeling for them that I did. Right. And it was not an overt call. It was an implicit call. It certainly said, I am doing this, and I believe it's not inappropriate to do so, provided that you are taking, careful measures to ensure your own personal safety and the safety of others. Obviously, we know masking is not even really primarily about protecting of myself. It has to do with ensuring that if I happen, by happenstance, have the virus, that I'm not passing it along to others. And so, I know a number of members of our community, because they saw that I went out to other future gatherings that took. It's we don't get the time. And this summer, in many ways, the most impossible.
Right. I mean, I'm the case study of that. You went out. I saw that you went out. I'm sitting home saying, "Oh my God, I can't believe you went out," and I didn't. And then I think that the synagogue, you did a really wonderful thing. There was a webinar or a Zoom call that we all got to have, and we all got to talk about A, how thrilled we were that you weren't hurt, and B, how can we go and support our brothers and sisters during this pandemic. And everybody had such great ideas and suggestions.
Yeah.
And also reassurances about, the news is showing us that one moment. And you're saying that the whole day was peaceful. And there were several people on the Zoom call that were saying that they had been to some of the rallies, marches, and that it really was a lot more tame than the news was making it out to be. or at least what our fears were telling us, you know, whether it's the news or our own fears, it is what it is. So I did find myself, I think within a day or two, attending a march, and it felt really, really good to be there because it felt so awful not being there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there was that tension. I mean, you know, when I showed up, I remember arriving at Pan Pacific Park. There were already large numbers. They were gathering and speaking from the center. So they were basically had giant crowds wrapped around. It was a giant series of concentric circles. And so it was really tight pack. I have to say, it was the first time, obviously, in months that I'd been that close to anybody, much less that many people. And
Yeah.
it really felt strange. I mean, if I'm being really honest, Beth,
Yeah.
how do I distance here? How do I make sure that at least we're outdoors, but how do I, you know, I mean, I was trying to find my spot in those circles where I wasn't directly shoulder to shoulder with somebody else. It's a weird feeling. And then there's that awful feeling of, well, gosh, like, why am I, you know, concerned about distancing myself when in point of fact, I should be concerned with aligning myself. And yet there really were two really important concerns. I mean, the reality was I didn't want to be a part of causing anybody to be sick while I was causing
Right.
sick.
Right.
Causes for justice, and so, and ours, all of ours. And so yeah, tension was very real. I do feel like ultimately it felt really good to be a part of a crowd like that, that was saying, you know what, willing to put our bodies on the line. At the end of the day, marching is always putting your body on the line. And so this time maybe a bit more so than usually, pandemic, maybe a lot more so than usual. But yeah, I think I was glad to hear that you felt like when you went and did it, it didn't feel so much like a violation of a health order as it did a transcending of, well, really kind of an aligning of how do I make two competing values come to a really important moment.
Right. That's absolutely right. The more I, you know, if I take a look at the actions that these two farmers took who hid my mother, it's that same thing. I wouldn't be here talking to you had they not done that. It's just as simple as that. So as I walk through the world, I'm constantly examining within myself, do I have the courage to do this? Do I have the bravery to do that? Do I have the selflessness when I'd rather be home, you know, watching The Crown? I mean, there are so many things that pull us in so many different directions, and to actually show up, especially for a cause that is not necessarily our cause, but someone else's cause, and we have to be there to support.
Yeah, it's really important. You know, Beth, oftentimes, and you probably heard me talk about it this way, I know at least once or twice on the High Holy Days, I've framed this type of decision making in the metaphor of a book, and that is the book of our lives. Mm-hmm. That, you know, when you look at your life as a story that will someday be told, when we die, people tell our stories. They tell them in eulogies, they tell them in letters, they recollections to children and grandchildren. And they live out the legacies. They carry forward the lessons, the messages of our lives. The question of how do I want the book of my life to read is a really important question at moments like that. You know, sooner or later, someone will look back. My kids will look back. I'll just use myself as an example. And for better and for worse, they're going to remember all of the puzzle pieces of the life story that I taught. And, you know, we all know as parents, anybody who's a parent out there, you don't need the metaphor of the book because you know that you're constantly parenting. It doesn't matter when you think you're parenting. Every single thing you're doing, self-modeling, and that includes the worst parts of yourself that you wish you could distance yourself from. Maybe you've been working on trying to distance yourself from, but at the end of the day, they're also a part of who you are. And your kids are learning all of that. And forget about just our kids. All the people who we have the blessing of giving the gift of influence, the story of our lives will ultimately tell the truth about us. And so in a moment like that, I think what you're really trying to decide is someday, you know, maybe this will help in making decisions, as opposed to going, do I want to pick myself up and go out to this route? Do I think it's safe? I think the more interesting question is 5 years, 10 years from now, when I'm looking back, how I met that moment. When I think about how the death of George Floyd is going to become contextualized as a part of American history, as a part of our religious history, as part of our moral character as a nation. When I look back and I say, how did I inspire that moment? And it may not have been marching. It may be that I chose to do it with donating. It may be that I chose to do it with online activity. It may be that I chose to do it with advocacy. There's any number of different ways to do it. I'm not suggesting that mine is the only way. But I want that when the 5 years are gone, the 10 years are gone, or more importantly, maybe even when the 50 years are gone, and I'm not the one here telling that story anymore, how will that story be told? And more importantly, how will it be lived forward? Because anybody that we have the gift of thing is ultimately going to be the ones that give our reach, right? The power of life is not just captured in what we get to do in the short period of time we live inside these bodies. It's all the people that we influence and change. You're doing by bringing together people to hear the story that you tell in your movie, that you're telling by having these gatherings. The gift of our influence ultimately is lived forward long beyond the short lifespan. Even if we live a long time, it's still relatively short. And so, yeah, what will the story say about us? I was very old, thinking I want to make sure that when I'm looking back at moments, June 2020, with all of its competing narratives, need to be out in the streets, need to not be out in the streets, and to be respectful of health orders and all of this. That the story, at least that I was the one driving the bus, to how my story would be told.
Absolutely. Well, I'd follow you into a foxhole, Rabbi. There's no question about
We've been
it.
together over the years.
Right. That's true. That's very true. So tell us what you're working on now. What's happening today, and where is your focus? And then I have another question for you after that. But let's just start with where you are right now and what you're doing right now.
Yeah, I am presently one of the two national coaches of an organization known as Truah. Truah is the Hebrew word for shofar call, the sound of the shofar. And Truah is a network of 2,000 North American rabbis who are joining together to be a response to the rabbinic, the rabbinic call to conscience, the response to the call to justice. And so we align with one another in order to galvanize power with one another, able to speak with one voice with more than a couple thousand rabbis doing so together. And so I am presently in the middle of a term as one of the two co-chairs. I joined that line first as a secretary and then vice chair, and now as co-chair in the early part of the Trump administration. And it felt just urgently important. The idea of being, we organize all kinds of actions, including plenty of actions all over the country that have resulted in nonviolent civil disobedience, arrests for important causes that lie at the center of Jewish values. And so at this moment in time, as we're preparing for a presidential transition, which is itself going to demand not only the moment, but in the years going forward, I want to be really, really clear. Whatever your political stripe may be, it's so one side relieves us of the need for a rabbinic call to conscience, and the other side constantly demands it. In point of fact, our organization existed during the Obama administration and during the Bush 43 administration and going backward. Why? Because leaders need to be held to account. And at the end of the day, religious leaders, 2,000 plus rabbis speaking with one voice. And then beyond that, the 2,000 rabbis lead communities that include people like you, Beth, and people who are here watching us here today. The power of that, being able to represent, speak together with one voice, and to hold, whether it's political leaders, whether it's communal leaders, other religious leaders, leaders within the faith community, to be responsible to ensuring that values that we teach in a service show up in the way in which we live our lives. Mm-hmm. Those who suggest that the political sphere is somehow one thing and the religious sphere another don't actually look at the scripture very much, because there's just no way to line up a life devoid from political activism, from the religious values that show up all throughout the Torah, the prophetic tradition, the rabbinic commentaries. Same is true in Christian tradition. If you're a big fan of Jesus, you certainly be a big fan of getting out into public space to live out the values of love that Jesus lived to propagate. And so that's where I am right now. I'm honored to be one of the chairs of this organization that does work all across the country. And we are right now putting our thinking caps on and trying to figure out where will the priorities be in the early years, early months, weeks and months of the Biden administration.
Right. And I want to clarify for people that are just tuning in as we're talking that Trua, although what you're saying is if you have a religious belief and you want to see it walk the walk and it has a relationship with the political temperature of the day, you still do believe in the separation of church and state. You're not in any way.
That's a great point. Yeah, that's an important point. You know, when we as Jews take action because of our Jewish values, there's a total separation of church and state, because the separation of church and state means that I should not be able to force all of you to embrace my religious values.
Right.
Doesn't mean I shouldn't be able to speak out because of my religious values.
Right.
The same goes for my Christian friends, my Muslim friends, folks from Eastern religious traditions, whatever the religious tradition is. If your religion drives you to certain values, here's a good example: Catholic tradition. There are folks who are drawn by the religious tradition to speak out and to mobilize their power together to serve the pro-life movement. It's not where I am, but there's no violation of church and state for a Catholic person to speak out on the basis of their Catholic beliefs and values in opposition to abortion. Where it would violate church and state separation would be if they demanded all of us, for all of us, to have to align with that same value. It's important when policymakers are trying to determine where is this country and where is their country situated on all these different values. It's actually important that the different religious groups and individuals are heard in their proper proportion, so that those who are making these decisions recognize that it's a representative government. They're there to hear from all of us and ultimately be those who speak for the collective voice.
Absolutely. I think it's tremendous. I really, really do. We are close to finishing up our half an hour together. I am so happy that we finally got our technology to work with each other. I also made a change on my end and switched from my iPhone to my iPad. So who knows if maybe that was the cause of
strange grumbling. We found it.
It's ancient history now, right?
Yes.
So, so I just want to still have everyone know with whom we're speaking here right now. This is Rabbi Ken Chasen. It is an honor and a privilege for me to actually call you my rabbi. And Rabbi Chasen is the senior rabbi at Leo Beck Temple in Bel Air, Los Angeles, California. It's a great place. 2 of my 3 children had the privilege of becoming bar mitzvahs under your tutelage and guidance and love. And you are an inspiration to me. You always have been. I know you always will be. And it's just an honor to have you come on Banter with Beth on a Sunday morning. And I hope we get to do it again.
It's such a great pleasure. Beth, so proud of you and grateful to you for the good work that you're doing, including this bantering with all of your guests. But the film that you're making, it's such important work. It's work in the media universe, but there are those who are out there attempting to ensure that message reaches hearts, and that's what you're all about. And so very, very happy to be part of this conversation today. And you're a Leo Becker for a reason.
Oh, thank you, Ken. Thank you. Well, give my best to everybody.
Will do.
And we're going to sign off. Log on to Banter with Beth on Sundays and Wednesdays at 10. Do you have a shout out for anything that you want people to log on to, Ken?
Best is maybe you can follow us and the work of our synagogue, which includes all of this justice work, simply by visiting our website, which is leobecktemple.org. It's one big long word, and the important thing to remember is that Beck is for the name of the great German Rabbi Leo Beck, which means it's spelled the German way. So that's B-A-E-C-K. So www.leobecktemple.org, and that'll clue you in everything that we're doing in our community.
That'll be great. And then we're going to post this on Instagram, so it'll be on IGTV. And then within the half hour, we will also be posting it on our YouTube channel. So just go to Beth Lane Film on YouTube, and you can see it there. Place there. And until we see each other again, I'm just going to give you a big virtual hug. Bye. Oh, sorry. One last thing. Everybody tune in. If you want to come to the Zoom Saloon this afternoon with Pam Stevens, it starts at 1 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. My mom will be speaking, sharing her story, and you can get some updates about the film. Okay. Bye, everybody.
Take care.
Bye.